Good evening. My name is Hannah Costner. I'm the scholar in residence at the festival this summer. And it really is a pleasure to introduce to you Bebe Miller Company's A History this evening. As I was preparing this talk, I thought about the kinds of history I have with Miller's work and how it all comes together for me as I watch this piece. So in the spirit of this evening's work, A History, I'm going to first share my history of Bebe Miller's work, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Bebe Miller Company and the work you will see tonight. I have a special place in my heart and my kinesthesia for Bebe Miller's work. I have seen it live and on video. I have taken her technique class. I have interviewed her. I have read and embodied snippets of her choreography from Modern Notation's score, and then witnessed my students do the same. I once analyzed photographs of her company taken by Lois Greenfield. I was thrillingly privileged to sit on her living room floor and listen to her tell scholar Candace Feck the hours of reminiscences that became her oral history for the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts. And this is the vinyl record in the exhibit downstairs labeled the Miller Feck Sessions. There are few choreographers who I can say that I have seen each of their new works live in the past 10 or 12 years, and even fewer for whom I can make these larger claims of presence. As I watched A History for the first time and went through the exhibit downstairs, I experienced little bursts of excitement as I caught whispers of Bebe Miller Company's history, and they entwined with my own. Hey, that's Verge. There's that poignant headstand from Landing Place that feels like tree roots growing upward. I've read a version of that journal entry published in Contact Quarterly. I forgot how precarious the enormous land is for the Tiny Sisters. During the company's show and tell of the work earlier this week, Miller said that she and the company are interested in the connections between the individual pieces they make and what happens in the in-between spaces and ensuing years from one project to the next. They do not think that the last performance of a work is the end of a project, but a connector to the next one. In watching Miller, Angie Hauser, Darryl Jones, and Talvin Wilkes enact their history with each other through their roles in tonight's piece, I realized that I too have a history of experiencing Miller's work through time. And one could argue, we all have our own histories we carry with us from our experiences of one dance performance to the next that make up our understanding both of contemporary dance and our place in the world in relation to it. As I watch A History, even though I revel in seeing snippets of things I recognize from the past and notice how they surface now, and I just indulge in the pleasure of watching Hauser and Jones dance together, I think of what larger questions or possibilities this piece poses for the field, since certainly the references will not ring familiar all the time. This week, Miller said that she and the company started out this project to make a website archive of her company's history, and instead, the project culminated in this evening-length work when they realized that their focus was on making dances. I love this idea of an archival project as a generative process instead of an attempt to preserve what already exists. A History poses the question, how do you perform an archive? As I wrote in your program notes, but it also opens possibilities for what an archive is and how we capture, share, and disseminate embodied histories. As an archival researcher in dance, I can tell you that while archives housed in libraries, in institutions, or in people's basements contain treasure troves of histories upon histories and historical bodies upon historical bodies, one of the challenges is to find the connection between embodiment and the archive, or to reconstitute fleshy bodies and lived experiences from the traces in photographs, dance writing, film, and dust. One of the compelling things about A History is the idea that they at once have a history, perform a history, and continue to live a history. Their history exists in movement and in their relationship with each other, and the performance of it creates an archive that happens in real time and flesh. It is a generative, lived archive that is not static. We all have experience inscribed into our bodies, and having that assumption as an undercurrent of this piece draws attention to Hauser and Jones's performances, not just as onstage characters, but as real people with a real relationship that plays out in the space of the stage. Hauser and Jones perform with the historical ghosts of themselves and other Bebe Miller Company members simultaneously as they perform the movements in this dance. Sometimes there is a gentle somberness underneath otherwise playful interaction. At other times, they seem like adult siblings going through boxes in their parents' attic, gleefully digging out lifetime memorabilia and trying it on for size. Remember this? The reliving of old invented games they used to play, or the dances and processes of which they were part, creates a fascinating palimpsest of layering the present iteration on top of past experiences, enabling us to see through the not fully erased strata on top of one another so that all parts are visible at once. If you have not already, I encourage you to check out the exhibit Bebe Miller Tracing History. This exhibit is downstairs in the Black Box Theater for the duration of this performance run and is open tonight after the show as well. It contains all kinds of treasures. It's a full retrospective of Miller's work with many videos of her choreography and performance since the late 1970s, excerpted and in full. You'll see Miller dancing through 30 plus years of dance making alongside wall hangings featuring excerpts from her journal entries over the years. You'll see her new dance fort and hear her oral history. I spent time in the exhibit the other day, and I found my attention widened between the many screens and sound scores, as the ongoing sound of the large screen blended with what was coming through the headphones on a smaller TV. It's a powerful experience to be surrounded by the work and this history in this space, and finding myself in the middle of it all felt like a layered experience of all of these dances living at the same time. The exhibit offers a retrospective look at archival materials that have existed for years as a complement to the dance you will see tonight that is a generative archive in performance. As the exhibit shows, contemporary dance has changed since Miller started presenting work in the 1970s and founded the Miller Company in 1985 in New York, and her company has changed as well. Miller founded the company in the middle of what is sometimes called the 1980s dance boom. There was substantial funding for dance, abundant experimentation, and a rich proliferation of choreographers and dances in cities like New York. Aesthetically, the mid-1980s is sometimes called late postmodern dance, a genre generally defined as beginning in the early 1980s that more or less continued through the late 1990s. It characteristically contains exciting physicality and technical display, meaty thematic material, non-narrative movement for its own sake, autobiographical journeys, and non-linear choreographic narrative structures. Miller's process and product has shifted along with contemporary dance since the millennium to involve a range of movement inspirations, improvisational scores as part of a dance's choreographic structure, and since 1997, collaboration with dramaturg Talvin Wilkes as an integral part of the process of meaning making. Miller started dancing as a child at the Henry Street Playhouse on the Lower East Side in New York, and later studied Alan Nicolai technique there with Murray Lewis. This movement form is based on improvisational structures, shape, and an attention to space. It seems fitting that in this project that we'll see tonight, which has an improvisational score for its backbone, this thread of history through movement also comes through. Another element of the work that comes through here is the idea of storiness, a term that Miller uses to discuss dance. I first heard her use this word in talking about Necessary Beauty in 2008. Hauser defined storiness the other day as the slipperiness of dance narrative. And we can also say it is how dances make meaning. One of the things that excites me about contemporary dance is that it is a site of meaning-making that occurs in space and time. Especially for a choreographer like Miller, whose dances are about the human condition, experiencing the storiness of her work is distinct within the form of contemporary dance. I often associate the suffix ness, N-E-S-S, with Bebe Miller. This suffix modifies and expands terms by including the being of the thing, storiness, thingness, beingness. It's a way of being that is both general and specific, discrete and continuous. At once, there is everything and one thing. Though Miller is not performing in the work tonight, you can see her performances on video downstairs. She carries this kind of focus into her own performance. When she performs, she has an incredible soft yet direct focus. It is clear where her focus is, and she takes everything around her in at the same time while sending it back out. On the video that introduces the exhibit, choreographer Jawa Willijozaler comments that Miller's focus is direct and searing, while also being more full. Miller attributes this to her Nicolai training, but there is something more to it. Hauser and Jones, while they have their own ways of being in this work, also perform with a focus that goes inward and outward at the same time, and is at once billowing and direct, playful and reflective, commingling present and past and future. The storiness, the meaning emerges through these physical timelines. As Hauser and Jones are us now performing us then, they spiral into future and past, ebbing, flowing, and finding a simmer that leaves tangible pebbles of their lived experience for us to pick up in their wake. I hope that this talk has given you a glimpse inside the work you will see tonight. I'm around and always happy to continue the discussion. Enjoy the performance and do check out the exhibit downstairs if you have not already. Thank you.